Hey everybody! I have some great stories for you today, so sit back, relax, and let's get into it. I, male 45, have a son, male 16, who loves to play video games. I purchased him a PlayStation 5 for his birthday last year, and he plays online with friends. He's been telling me that he has been chatting online with a girl, female 15, and they have slowly started dating. They don't talk over the microphone as hers broke, and he has no idea what she looks like. I told him to be careful about what he sends her and to not give her any personal information. My son has his own credit card with a limit on it, and I told him to not go over the limit and only use it for emergencies. I got the credit card bill for this month, and there were charges repeatedly for the game he plays in charges of $50, $100. I was furious as he gets gift cards for the games for his birthday and Christmas. I approached him with the bill and asked him what the charges were. He told me that his girlfriend wanted new stuff for the game and would break up with him if he didn't purchase them. I told him that I would pay the charges and that he would have to pay me back the money. I told him that there were many jobs that would hire him. He got angry with me that he wouldn't have time to work as he plays sports and school. I told him that if I was able to balance working and school, he would have no problem doing it. I took his credit card away. He's not speaking to me now, only if it's in regards to being picked up or needing a ride to see his friends. He's mad that I'm making him pay the money back and get a job. Am I the jerk for telling my son to pay back the money he spent on his online girlfriend? Look, you're teaching your son a valuable lesson about financial responsibility and the reality of online relationships. It's tough love, but it's necessary. He's at an age where understanding the value of money and the consequences of his actions is crucial. Yes, he's upset now, but that's part of growing up. You're not just handing out punishment, you're setting him up for success in the long run by making him accountable. And let's be honest, if his girlfriend is threatening to break up over not getting virtual gifts, that's a red flag he needs to see. You did the right thing. It's not about the money, it's about the principle. Stick to your guns. And now, before I talk your ear off even more, let's move on to the next post. My female 39 daughter very recently had her 17th birthday. My husband, male 42, and I told her to pick out a restaurant that she'd like us to take her to for her birthday. She chose a seafood restaurant that we'd never been to. In looking over the menu, I saw that the vast majority of the dishes contained shellfish. There were a few fish entrees as well as some surf and turf, but there were only a couple of non-seafood dishes. Our son, male 15, is deathly allergic to shellfish. He also can't stand fish. There were only a couple of dishes there that he could actually eat. I didn't want to take him there because I knew that he wouldn't really enjoy his meal, and I was worried about cross-contamination. I told my daughter that this restaurant wouldn't work and that she would have to pick out a different one. My son said that he would be fine just staying home, that we could use the money that we would have spent on his meal to just order him a pizza instead. My husband also insisted that since it was our daughter's birthday, she should be able to choose the restaurant and that our son would be fine home alone with pizza and video games. But here's the thing, we can only afford to go out as a family every so often. When we splurge on a restaurant meal, I want both of our children there. I insisted, and my daughter chose a different place, and we had a nice meal as a family. But she is still a little salty that she didn't get to have her first choice of restaurants. Most people I've asked say I'm wrong. But again, we can only afford to go out every so often. Is it so wrong that I wanted to do it as a family? My daughter still had a nice birthday meal. Look, I get where you're coming from. Wanting to have a family meal where everyone can enjoy themselves is important, but here's the rub. It was your daughter's birthday, not a generic family dinner night. By making her change her choice, you've essentially told her that her preferences come second to her brother's allergies, which, while serious, could have been managed for one night. Your son even offered a solution, showing maturity in understanding the situation. It's great to want family unity, but part of that is also recognizing and celebrating individual moments and desires. Your daughter's still salty because, well, her special day was compromised. It's not about the meal, it's about feeling heard and valued. All right, now for the next post. I, male 15, turned 15 last Thursday and had my party that Friday. Everything was going good until my nephew, male 5, came. I didn't even want him to come because he's not well behaved at all, but they told me that they didn't want him to feel excluded by everyone else being invited, and they'll just have my brother watch him better. I told my dad that I didn't want him coming because I didn't want him throwing a fit all night, but they told me that he wouldn't be and that I shouldn't be dramatic. They told me that they didn't want their grandchild to be upset because he wouldn't be there, and if something does go wrong, they'll take responsibility for it. My nephew threw my birthday cake on the floor. So something did go wrong. He was upset that he didn't get to blow out the candles and started screaming and crying when my brother held him back. After he calmed down, he literally dug his hands in the cake and slid it to the floor. I was disappointed, not surprised. My brother and parents were apologetic, and my brother compensated our parents for my cake and apologized to me. It's been 3 days, and I'm basically over it now, but my brother called me after school and told me that he wants to take me out for an apology birthday dinner. I told him that I was fine and that our parents were already planning on getting me another cake, so it wasn't really a big deal. He asked me if I was sure, and I told him that I was, and thanked him for giving them the money. I told him I was already planning on going out with my friends and we could do it another time. After that, we kind of talked some more before he hung up. When my parents got home, they told me that my brother told them that morning that he was going to invite me out, and they asked me if I accepted it. When I told them I didn't, they got mad at me for refusing and said that I probably made him feel worse than he already does. He didn't sound hurt to me. I told them that he already gave them money to pay for the cake, and I'm grateful for that. I told them that I don't blame him at all, and I blame them instead. I said that if they felt bad, it could have been avoided if they didn't invite my nephew in the first place, and that they said they were going to take responsibility. But instead they are making my brother pay for the cake they said they were responsible for. They got mad when I said this and said that they didn't mean to ruin my birthday and that they didn't want my nephew and brother to feel left out. My parents have been acting pretty cold to me since, but I'm not too worried. Whenever we have a disagreement, they usually ignore me until the next day, and they magically forget everything that happened. I'm just confused if I was wrong or not. Look, your feelings are valid. You had every right to not want a known troublemaker at your birthday party, and guess what? Your fears were confirmed when he wrecked the cake. It's a mess, but not surprising. Your brother stepping up to compensate shows maturity, but your parents? They're the ones who dropped the ball here. They promised to take responsibility and then shifted the blame and financial burden onto your brother. That's not taking responsibility, that's passing the buck. And now they're icing you out because you called them out on their mistake. That's childish. You're being more adult about this than they are. It's not about the cake or the dinner. It's about respecting your wishes on your day and owning up to mistakes. They owe you an apology, not cold shoulders. Tell me what you guys thought in the comment section. All right, guys, now we must move on to the next post or else I'm going to lose my voice. I, male 25, was placed in the foster system by my biological parents when I was 2 years old. I was adopted sometime later by my real parents. I recognise that I'm extremely fortunate and lucky to have been adopted before I had any real memory of the system, and that my parents gave me a better life than I would have ever had if I had stayed with my biological parents. I grew up privileged, went to private schools, had holidays abroad, and had my tuition paid fully when I started university. I was loved and never lacked anything. I currently have a well-paying job as a chemical engineer, a beautiful wife, a house paid off fully by my in-laws, and 2 children. I'm very grateful for everything I have and recognise that I would be leading a very different life had I not been adopted. Last year, I was contacted by Opal, female 27, who claimed I was her brother and wanted to meet up. After careful consideration, I agreed. After doing a DNA test together and digging a bit into family history, Opal and I discovered that we were placed into foster care around the same time. Usually foster care will try to keep siblings together, but for some reason we were not registered as siblings and were placed into different foster homes, probably due to having a different father surname and being given up by different people. Opal got very upset by this discovery, even more so after she found out that while she was never adopted, I had lived a good life with loving parents. After the discovery, Opal started calling and asking to hang out with my parents and me, or asking me to do certain favours for her. It got uncomfortable really quickly since, to be frank, I don't know her that well. In all aspects, except genetically, she is a total stranger to me. I don't feel comfortable lending her money or introducing her to my entire family. She even made a couple of comments that made me uneasy when she asked me if I thought my parents would have adopted her also had they known she existed when I was adopted, and if I think they would accept her into the family now. Last night she called me again, this time to complain about how she saw that the women in my family had a get-together over the weekend, and how she felt excluded since she didn't get an invite. I told her that I get that she's upset, but that was a family get-together for all the women, and she's not family to them, so she's not entitled to an invitation. Opal began screaming at me about how it was unfair and how, since I'm considered family, she should be considered too by extension, and that I owe it to her to make sure my family invites her next time since it's the least I could do for her as someone who got adopted. I told her I'm sorry she feels excluded and that she wasn't adopted, but neither my family nor I owe her anything before hanging up the phone. Since then, I've been receiving non-stop texts calling me a jerk and an evil jerk. I'm starting to second-guess myself and need an outside perspective on the situation. Look, I get it. Finding a long-lost sibling is like unearthing a part of your history you didn't know was missing. But here's the hard truth. Just because you share DNA with Opal doesn't mean you owe her a spot at the family dinner table, especially not right off the bat. It's clear you've led very different lives, and while empathy for her situation is necessary, boundaries are too. It's not your responsibility to compensate for the life she didn't have. Her demands and the guilt-tripping, not okay. You've tried to be understanding, but her expectations are unrealistic and frankly unfair. You're not the villain for wanting to protect your peace and the sanctity of your family dynamics. It's tough, but sometimes being family isn't about blood, it's about the bonds you choose to nurture and grow. All right, now for the next post. I, female 38, have a neighbour. We'll call her Sarah, 38F. I'm married with 2 girls, 8 and 11, and she has 2 boys, 8 and 12. Sarah is married, but her husband travels a lot for work, and she works from home. I am a teacher, so I have school breaks and summers off. Over winter break, Sarah's kids kept coming over to see if my kids could play. Play means they have been sent over because they're annoying mum and she's trying to work. Backstory, the kids were friends when they were younger, but as they got older, they don't really have much in common, and they've drifted apart. Her kids go to a parochial school, and my kids go to public school, so they don't even have teachers or classmates in common. They don't have a ton in common anymore, and when they do play, Sarah's kids fight a lot, with each other and with my kids. One day over winter break, the younger one came to the door to see if my kids could play, and I told him they didn't want to play right now. Sarah sent me a text saying that she was on a work call and she could really use some time with the boys out of the house. I caved and told my girls to just try and find something they could do together. 10 minutes later, my oldest came upstairs crying, saying that one of the boys made a nasty comment about how boring our house was, and it was dumb that I wouldn't let him play Xbox. The Xbox is my husband's, and it's in our family room where I was doing laundry and watching a show. I told the boys if they were bored, they were more than welcome to leave. Now it's almost spring break, and Sarah just asked if I could watch the boys 2 days because she has 2 busy work days and I'm off work. I told her no because we would be on vacation in Florida, visiting family. She said okay, and jokingly said, "I guess I'll just hit you up in the summer." I replied and said that I will not be babysitting her kids over the summer. True emergencies, sure, I said. I'm sorry, but just because I'm not at school during the summer does not mean that I am your free childcare. Yes, I don't physically go to work over the summer, but I take online classes for my master's and I teach online summer school, meaning I am also working from home. She blew up at me and told me I should help her because she's alone a lot, and now that the kids are older, it's harder to keep them entertained all day. I told her that I didn't care if the kids played together outside during the summer, but I was not going to be a caretaker or responsible for her kids unless she was going to compensate me. I tried explaining to her that the kids do not get along the way that they used to. My kids don't fight with each other the way her kids fight with each other, and my kids don't really want them to be at our house all the time. Now she's pissed and not speaking, and her oldest told my oldest that I'm not a good person because I won't help my neighbour. Am I really the AH because I won't watch her kids over the summer? Look, parenting is hard, especially when you're juggling work and kids solo a lot of the time, but that doesn't give Sarah the right to use you as her personal unpaid childcare service. It's clear you've tried to be accommodating, but there's a line and she's crossed it. Your primary responsibility is to your own kids and your work, not to mention your studies. It's not fair for Sarah to expect you to drop everything because she's in a bind. And let's talk about the entitlement here, expecting you to watch her kids over the summer just because you're home? No, that's not how this works. You've offered a reasonable compromise by saying the kids can play outside, but taking on the role of caretaker is a whole different ballgame. Stand your ground. You're not a daycare service, and it's high time Sarah recognised that. All right, guys, now we must move on to the next post, or else I'm going to lose my voice. My daughter was supposed to graduate college this semester. We have been talking about her graduation party for basically 7 months, what she wanted to do, and who to invite. We have already sent out the invites, and multiple relatives have booked flights to come up. The issue is my daughter isn't graduating. She lied to everyone for at least 4 months. She failed a class she needed to graduate last semester and didn't inform anyone. She told us this yesterday. The party is in about a month. Everything has been paid for already. So I informed her she needs to call all her relatives and explain the situation. If they can't get a refund for their flights, I expect her to offer to pay them back. I also informed her she needs to pay back the rental price since I can't get a refund for some stuff. This resulted in a huge argument, and she is calling me a jerk for humiliating her. I explained that it is her fault, and if she informed us months ago, this wouldn't be happening. My husband thinks I am being a bit harsh, but is sticking with me. To add, she knew she failed the class by break the first week of December. She had all December, January, February, and this March to inform us, and didn't. She continued to plan with us for the graduation party and never informed us she wasn't graduating. It was a core class, offered once a year. She will need to take it in the fall. She knew she wasn't graduating. The school isn't letting her walk. She will have to walk at the December one. Multiple people are asking what I would have done if she informed me. I would have moved the party and helped her figure out how to make the best out of the extra semester. Probably would have looked into if she can add a quick minor, but can't do that now since most of the summer classes have been filled. Look, I get it. Finding out your child isn't graduating when you thought they were is a shock. But here's the thing. Your daughter made a mistake, a big one, but the way you're handling it, it's not going to teach her responsibility, it's going to teach her fear. Fear of making mistakes and fear of telling the truth. Yes, she should have come clean earlier, and yes, it's a mess with the relatives and the non-refundable costs. But making her pay back relatives and cover rental costs? That's not just about teaching her a lesson, that's about punishment and humiliation. What she needs now is guidance on how to handle her mistake, not a financial burden that could potentially ruin your relationship. Remember, the goal is to raise a responsible adult, not to win the I told you so game. Well, I could talk all day about this, but let's jump into the next post. I, male 30, was on a flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles International Airport last night. Packed flight, everyone just trying to get some sleep. About 2 hours in, the lights come on, and an announcement crackles through the intercom. Turbulence ahead, fasten seatbelts. Pretty standard stuff. Then all hell breaks loose. This woman, maybe late 40s, impeccably dressed, starts freaking out, screaming about air pockets, demanding to speak to the pilot, the whole 9 yards. Flight attendant, super patient lady, bless her, tries to calm her down, explains its standard procedure. Turbulence is normal. Nope, not having it. This lady, who we'll name Jane, throws a fit. Not the screeching nails on a chalkboard kind, but a cold, steely fury. She accuses the flight attendant of lying, of putting everyone in danger, and demands to be deplaned immediately. Flight attendant says that's not possible mid-flight, and Jane launches into this whole spiel about how she's a doctor, pulls out an ID to prove it, and if something happens, it's on the airline. Now, the rest of the plane is awake. People are grumbling, some looking scared. A baby starts crying. Flight attendant is trying to reason with Jane, but it's like talking to a brick wall. Finally, I just lose it. I yell out, probably a little too loudly, "Look, lady, we all get turbulence. It's not a 5-star resort, but it's safe. Sit down and shut up before you get yourself arrested." Everyone stares at me. Jane spins around, eyes blazing, and starts in on me about disrespecting a medical professional. I fire back that a real doctor wouldn't be causing a scene and freaking everyone out. The flight attendant dives in, trying to mediate, but the damage is done. We hit some turbulence, not terrible, but enough to jostle the plane. Jane freaks again, and some people start getting panicky. I feel awful. Maybe I made things worse. The flight attendant gives me a look that could curdle milk, but then steers Jane away to talk to her privately. By the time we land, things are calmer, but the tension is thick. Jane gives me a withering look as she disembarks, and a few people mutter thanks under their breath. So am I the antagonist? Did I just escalate a bad situation? Or was I right to shut down a meltdown that was putting other passengers on edge? I'm honestly not sure. Oh boy. Let's get one thing straight. Air travel is not for the faint of heart, and it sounds like Jane missed that memo. But here's the kicker. While her behaviour was absolutely out of line, your approach, not exactly helpful. I get it. Tensions were high and patience was thin on the ground, but yelling at someone who's clearly having a meltdown doesn't calm the storm. It just adds fuel to the fire. And let's not forget calling out a medical professional in such a charged situation. Bold move, but not the wisest. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Sure, you might have meant well, trying to protect the peace, but the execution left a lot to be desired. Next time, maybe try a softer approach. Or better yet, let the trained professionals handle it. All right, guys, now we must move on to the next post, or else I'm going to lose my voice. A few days ago, my ex-husband mistakenly transferred 2 payments of $8,700 and $9,275. He did this at around 7:40 a.m. in the morning, and I didn't notice because I had just worked a double night shift and was getting ready for bed. so my phone was charging on the nightstand. At the same time, my 4 children were at my parents', and so I planned to sleep away half the day. I guess he realised his mistake around 8:30 a.m, and by then I was dead asleep. I woke up at around 4 p.m. to at least 100 missed calls, and maybe 150 texts asking and begging me to send him back the money. My initial thoughts were to send it back, but then I remembered he owed me 12000 and hasn't paid me back since I lent it to him 4 years ago, and he's had a million excuses why he can't pay me back, and yet I always see him living it up. I kept the amount he owed me and returned only $5,975 and told him I deducted his debt. Since then, I've had him call me every book in the name because this was apparently money he was saving to buy his girlfriend an engagement ring, the engagement venue, etc. So, according to him, he had to tell her. This then led to it ruining the surprise engagement he planned for the next weekend. His girlfriend has been bad-mouthing me, and it has caused a bit of a storm with me having to shut down my social media. And even his parents, who I had a cordial relationship with, has been impacted by it. I discussed the situation with a friend and colleague, and it was overheard by another colleague, and he has called what I did a jerk move, and I guess he shared it with a couple of other people, and now I'm not too sure anymore on whether I am being a jerk or not. Is this a jerk move? To add, the money was loaned to him after our divorce. We've been divorced for 7 years, and I loaned him the money 4 years ago, after he had lost his job and fell behind on bills and his rent. This has nothing to do with his child support payments, of which he is also behind on, and that's being handled by Family Court, the child support company. There are texts of him asking for a loan, and it included a repayment plan and time, but he never stuck to it, so there's a legal trail if he ever decided to involve the law, but I seriously doubt he would because it would cost way more to sue me, and I think I would have won in court since I only deducted his debt to me. Yes, he is the father of our 4 kids. I also didn't deduct the overdue child support payments because that is being handled by the courts, and I don't want to muddy the water and get myself in trouble. The child support company is aware of his arrears, and if I'm not mistaken, he will need to start paying soon, or they'll start garnishing his wages. Almost forgot, yes, I could have sued him for the debt, but it would have cost me way more to hire a lawyer. Suing someone isn't cheap. Lawyers cost real money, and a lawsuit takes real time. Lastly, when I say, then I remembered he owed me money, you have to understand I had just woken up after having worked a double shift. I'm a nurse, and I was still kind of exhausted when I woke up. I could barely remember my own name, let alone anything else, so my initial instinct was just to return the money, but I quickly got to my senses. Look, let's cut through the noise. You did what many would consider not just fair, but overdue. This man owes you $12,000, money that you could have used for anything, including your own children. Instead, he's been living it up, ignoring his debt to you, and now wants to play the victim because his grand plan got spoiled. Please, you simply reclaimed what was rightfully yours, and honestly, it's baffling that he thought he could just ignore such a significant debt without any repercussions. The fact that this has blown up on social media and among your acquaintances is unfortunate, but it's a reflection of his actions, not yours. He created this mess by not paying you back years ago. You're just cleaning it up. And let's not forget, you were considerate enough to return the excess. If anyone's the arsehole here, it's not you. Let me know if I missed anything important in the comment section below. But we must continue on, so here's the next post.